All right, 5.2, here we go. Learning target, absolute value of integers. Remember we talked about integers, positive whole numbers, negative whole numbers, and zero, okay? Now, let's talk about opposites. I talked about this just for a second in 5.1, but the opposite of a number is the same number, but it's either positive or negative. So here I got 3. I have a positive 3. The opposite of that would be a negative 3. Okay? If I have negative 2, I gave $2 away. I threw 2 balls away. I got rid of 2 things. Something negative. It went down 2 degrees. What's the opposite of that? A positive 2. Okay? So the opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. 8. It's 8. I got $8. The opposite of that would be spending $8. It's 8 degrees. The opposite of that would be negative 8 degrees. Okay? Negative 21. The opposite would be a positive 21. So opposites, if you have a positive, the opposite's negative. If you have a negative, the opposite's positive. What if we would have 0 is an integer. What's the opposite of 0? Well, there's no negative 0, so the opposite of 0 is 0. If I have nothing, I gave nothing. Nothing is nothing. Okay? But here's your finding opposites. Okay. Pretty basic. You should be able to get that. Now, let's go to absolute value. There's a little problem here. I'm going to apply the opposites and the absolute value into a real world problem, but we'll do that at the very end. Okay, so let's go over here. Absolute value. You need to, by the end of this lesson, I should come to you and say, what's absolute value? And you should be able to, in your own words, tell me exactly what it is and be able to find the absolute value of any number. Okay? Absolute value. It's important, especially when you start getting into adding and subtracting integers. Maybe you're adding a positive to a negative, you're adding a negative to a positive, you're subtracting negatives, you're doing all that. You need to know the absolute value of a number. Okay, so absolute value. You can kind of see, I'll do this one in brown, this line here and this line here. They're kind of long lines, and I put it around absolute value. When you see 2 long lines like that, it means I want you to give me what is the absolute value. Okay? And what does absolute value mean? It means it's the distance from 0. So last lesson we did a graphing thing. Once you can graph it, you can see what's the difference, the distance I mean. What's the distance from 0 to whatever number you're dealing with. Maybe it's a positive number. Maybe it's a negative number. What's the distance between the number and 0? Now, if I go a distance, it doesn't matter if I'm going from 0 to negative 2 or I'm going from 0 to 2. You can never go a negative distance. It's kind of like going back in time. I can't go back in time. I'll never have a negative absolute value. Absolute value is always positive. Always positive. Because you're going a distance from 0. You might be going back, but it's still, I'm going this many back. Or you're going forward. I'm going this many forward. Distance is always positive. Will you ever have a negative absolute value? Absolutely not. Okay? Never have a negative absolute value. Every absolute value is positive. So, let's get into this. So, 14. I could graph it. I'm going to put my 0 there. And I could do, let's just do it like this. Okay? So I have my little graph here. I have 0 here, then I have 7, 14, then I have 0 here, negative 7, negative 14. So it's a good graph. I want the absolute value of 14, so I want the absolute value here. Distance from 0. How much is it from here to here? Well, it's 14. So the absolute value, these 2 long lines tell you absolute value of 14 is 14. Okay? Now, I have the absolute value of -2. Let's do another one here. I'm going to put my 0 here. Then I go this way, 1, 2, -1, -2. Okay. So -2, I'm going to graph it right here. Now I want the distance from 0 to -2. How much, what's the distance from here to here? Well, I go 1, 2. Even though it's a -2, the absolute value from 0 to here is 2. So if I have -2, well, it means I spent $2. I gave 2 away. I lost 2. I burned $2. I don't know. Somehow I got rid of $2. So that's how I could say what happened. And someone says, well, if you lost $2, what's the absolute value of how much you lost? And the absolute value of how much I lost is 2. From 0, from not losing anything or not gaining anything, the 0, to going to -2, it's 2. So the absolute value of 14 is 14. From 0 to 14 is 14. The absolute value of -2, from -2 to 0, is 2 spaces, 2 units in distance. Okay? Positive, positive. You're going distance from 0. What's absolute value? Absolute value is distance from 0. Okay, now, you might see some problems here where it says, what's the absolute value of -9 added to the absolute value of 3? So below it, I'm going to put the absolute value of -9. So if I could graph it. I'm going to put 0 here, and I'm going to put -9 there. So from 0 to -9, the absolute value is, I'm going 9 places. So 9 is the absolute value. If I lost 9 things, what's my absolute value? 9. Now the absolute value of 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, it's right here. This is not a good graph. Let's get rid of that. There you go. Absolute value of 3 is 1, 2, 3. So the absolute value of -9 plus the absolute value of 3 is going to be 12. All right. Now the absolute value of -8, how much is it from 0 to -8? It's 8. Minus from 0 to -2, 2 spots. So 8 minus 2 is 6. Okay? Absolute value, the distance from the number you have to 0. You might be going positive, you might be going negative. It doesn't matter. What is the distance from 0 to the number you're going to? Okay? So let's put this into a real world situation. I want to know the absolute value of the distance between this bird here, it's a seagull, flying 25 feet above the sea level. So remember in 1, how would we represent this in a number? 25 feet above, that's a positive. So 25 would be plus 25. Okay. Now, we have a fish here that's swimming 10 feet below sea level. Below. Negative. Minus 10. So we have these numbers here. We have a bird flying 25 feet above sea level. We have a fish swimming 10 feet below the sea level. I want to find what is their absolute value. What's the distance between these two? From this one way down here and this one way up here. What's the distance? 10 plus, do I add these? Do I subtract them? What do? I find the absolute value. So sea level, I'm going to do this in pink here. Sea level is 0. This guy's going all the way down. We'll do it by 2s. -2, -4, -6, -8, -10. Okay? Swimming at -10. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. Okay. So we have my fish right here. And I have my bird right here at 25. So the absolute value of this from 25 to 0, the absolute value is 25. The absolute value of this from 0 to negative 10 is 10 spots. So now I just add my absolute values up. So from here to here is 25 and here to here is 10. So how far in distance are they? They are 35 feet apart. Okay? 35 feet apart. The other way I could do it is I know this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then I got to go 2 more. So I've already gone 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, and one more is 35. But if you find the absolute value, you know this is 25, this is 10, 35. Okay, so that's a real world kind of thing to know what is it, why it's important to find the absolute value of numbers. Okay, go ahead and watch the guided practice, do some independent practice, and the extra practice. If you have any questions, let me know. Absolute value, absolutely important.